I can see a few more people join, so we'll get started, and Jeff is going to be moderating this event. Welcome, everybody. Again, a few reminders on the front page. Please stay muted during this presentation with your video off unless you're a speaker. That's really helpful. The meeting will be recorded and we'll be sharing this on digital platforms. So just take note of that. And all questions can be sent in the public chat. We are going to have a team of lawyers from Goldman Partners Immigration answering live questions for folks on immigration topics in the chat. And all of the questions will be collected, answered, and sent out to participants after this presentation, along with the recording. So Jeff, if you want to get started, I think that would be awesome.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much. My name is Jeff Goldman. I'm an immigration attorney for 29 years. And I practice law at Goldman & Partners, and we're located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in San Mateo, California. We're here today because immigration is an incredibly important issue, especially these days. People need quality information during these volatile times, and they need to understand the significant ways to create pathways for foreign talent. And we thought today's presentation would be a good way to get us started in 2021. So on our agenda today, we will have a couple of presentations. The first will be from Tom Hopcroft of the Massachusetts Technology Leadership Council. And he'll be updating us on critical information about the value that foreign nationals bring to the US economy. I'll be giving an update of strategies for the H-1B lottery, which is coming up in March, as well as an overview of the current immigration changes that have been already brought in by the Biden administration and that we expect over the next couple of years. We'll then move to Silicon Valley Bank and their managing partner, Yvonne McCaig, who will be presenting with Mariano Nunez, who's CEO of Anapsys, and they'll be having a chat about where immigration fits within companies today from an employer's point of view. And finally, we're fortunate to have Parisa Chandler, CEO of Black Tech Pipeline, to giving us her thoughts on the place of diversity in the hiring process, which is just so important. So starting off, I want to introduce Tom Hopcroft. Tom is president and CEO of the Massachusetts Technology Leadership Council, the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan technology association in Massachusetts and in all of New England. He's certainly passionate about the future of technology and talent in Massachusetts, as you'll see from Tom's presentation. Thanks, Tom.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeff, and it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. If you hear any issues, by the way, with the audio or something, let me know and I'll turn my camera off. I've been having a little bit glitchy this morning. But anyway, as Jeff said, I'm Tom Hopcroft, and I run the Mass Technology Leadership Council, and we're the region's largest technology organization. And as you can see here, our mission is around accelerating innovation, growth, and the development of an inclusive tech ecosystem in Massachusetts. I'm going to spend probably just about 10 minutes to give you an overview on what the sector in Massachusetts looks like, and then some of the findings from our immigration report from a few years ago. So tech, as you can see, is a major driver of the Massachusetts economy. This 324,000 jobs in the tech sector is comprised of both tech and non-tech jobs. So if we click in, we can see the tech occupations within the tech sector. These are the engineering and coding jobs in the sector. The others, may be in marketing or finance or other areas, but taken together, that's what the tech sector looks like. There are a lot of tech occupations, these tech jobs within a lot of other industries in Massachusetts. And so if you look at the tech occupations, those techie jobs, that makes up about 248,000 jobs. Now we look at the tech sector with its tech and non-tech jobs and the tech occupations in and beyond the tech sector as what we call net tech jobs. So these are the core jobs. They're all supported by a lot of indirect and induced jobs. These are the law firms and accounting firms and marketing firms that support the companies, as well as the pizza shops and dry cleaners that may exist, the jobs that exist because of those jobs here. So all of those represent about 829,000 jobs. Taken all together, this represents over 1 million jobs in the Commonwealth, 1.26 million, and those that represents more than a third of the jobs. It's about 35% of the jobs in the state. And because those tech jobs pay twice the state average, it really underpins about 44% of the payroll. So tech is, it's a major sector. It's large, but unlike healthcare is large, but isn't growing the same way. And life sciences and clean tech are growing fast, but they don't have the scale yet. Tech is large, it's growing, and it's powering many other sectors. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So talent is the #1 reason that tech companies choose to come to Massachusetts, as you can see here. But it's also the #1 constraint to companies' growth once they get here. They just cannot find enough talent. I have a labor market chart here that shows how tight things are by looking at the average wages. On the left-hand side, it has tech industry wages, and so you can see that we're #3 after California and Washington. And on the bottom axis, you can see it's overall state wages, so we're #3 after DC and New York. So it just says that the labor market is pretty tight here for these tech jobs. If we move on, so the composition of tech is largely white and male. So you can see here about 28% of tech occupations are filled by women. The next chart on here shows that this hasn't been getting a lot better. As you can see, it's actually, if you go from baby boomers on the right to Gen X to millennials, it's getting worse. There may be a glimmer of hope around the Gen Zers, but the number here is so small that it may just be a data aberration, because we only have a few hundred in that sample. In terms of Black and Latinx participation, it's about 5% and 7% respectively. Mass TLC has actually put out a challenge last summer to the community to try to double those numbers by 2030. It's our 2030 challenge, but that's at 5% and 7% respectively. So you can click to the next slide, please. So when we think about building an inclusive tech talent pipeline, there's both sort of the international and the domestic side. On the international side, we have the H-1B visa pipeline, which we'll be talking about a bunch more today. We also have a lot of international talent coming through our traditional 4-year colleges. However, the 4-year college path self-selects for white and male in STEM careers. And the demographic trends are declining numbers of students matriculating out of high school generally over the next decade. And while the high school population is becoming more diverse, the completion rates are slower. So there's some constraints on the traditional pipeline. And then there's alternative pathways into the tech ecosystem as well for people that may not finish college or maybe returning to work after having a different career. Mass TLC has been doing work in all of these areas. I'm going to talk a bit about some of our immigration research in a moment. After the Trump travel ban, we ended up filing about 7 amicus briefs, including 2 in the United States Supreme Court. Didn't go the way we wanted to, though we were cited in the dissenting opinions. Unfortunately, President Biden has addressed that by executive order. So you can click on the build for that. The next one, for addressing the lack of women and minorities in tech, we're really trying to work with middle and high school students to get them inspired through our education foundation about careers in tech. And then on the alternative pathway, we've put together a resource called Mass Talent, where we're tracking all of the great programs in town for placement and funding and training, including, we're going to hear from Paris a little bit later, but including Mass Tech, Black Tech Pipeline is in there. But working with Congress on tech apprenticeships and other things like that. All right, so next. So if you look at our nation as a whole, we're a nation of immigrants. Over half of American startups valued at $1 billion or more have immigrant founders. Over half of Silicon Valley startups are founded by immigrants, and the state average there is about 38%. 40% of the Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children. Turning to Massachusetts, you see that here, because we're such a globally internet-connected city and state, 58% of our Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children. 72% of patents from MIT have at least one foreign-born inventor. MIT is a top 10 school in terms of number of patents that it produces. And 2.3 billion is contributed to the economy by close to 60,000 international students. This is all data from a report we put out in 2017, so that it's a couple of years behind here, but you get a sense of the impact that immigrants have on our ecosystem here in Massachusetts and the nation. When we look nationally, the challenge and opportunity that we have, 500,000 computing jobs are open nationwide, but we only graduate about 50,000 per year. Here in Massachusetts, there are 17 openings for every graduate with a degree in computer science or technology. And if we look at the 86 out of the 191 unicorn companies, the billion-dollar startups, are now located abroad, whereas about 15 years ago, those were virtually all in the United States. So just in summary here, immigrants are job creators and innovators. They're driving the growth and prosperity in Massachusetts and the United States. They're responsible for our global leadership position. And most interestingly, their proximity leads to greater innovation amongst the native population. So I found that just a really fascinating statistic, that they're not only creating lots of jobs and bringing lots of innovation. When you think of the travel ban, and we all have these iPhones and things. Steve Jobs, son of a Syrian. The idea that our role in the world could change if we don't continue to embrace immigrants. They're the reason that we're the world's leader that we are today in terms of innovation and economic prosperity. So with that, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Jeff, I'm going to hand it back over to you, but it's such an important topic, and it is complicated, and so having experts like you, to walk us through it is fantastic. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Tom. So I want to begin the presentation by getting my glasses on so that I can see the screen in front of me. But so much has happened in the past week, just 1 week of President Biden and his administration being in power. On day one, the Trump administration changed so much happening. A travel ban update. The Trump administration is now going to require, starting today, a negative COVID test for all persons entering the United States. Certain travel bans have ended, but not all of them. The Muslim travel ban has ended, but all of the other travel bans due to COVID are in place for at least another 60 days to give the Biden administration a chance to assess whether they should continue or not. Actually, he's required that the assessment be done by February 3rd. There are national interest exceptions available. So even if you're subject to a travel ban, either because you have been physically in a Schengen country or Ireland or England in the past 14 days prior to entering the US, or because you need an H-1 or L visa and you're subject to a ban for those visas, there are national interest exceptions available. You basically would need to prove that the work you're going to do inside the United States is going to help the battle against COVID, or it's going to be somehow in the national interest of the United States. Big news on what's happening with a change in the H-1B lottery. We'll be talking about it more in detail, but the Trump administration had issued a final rule which changes the H-1B lottery to prioritize foreign nationals with the highest salaries. And it was to go into effect on March 9th. That changes everything about the H-1B lottery. It's no longer random, but it's going to be skewed to favor those jobs at the highest salaries. However, the Biden administration has now required that the Department of Labor and the Department of Homeland Security to review this regulation for possible withdrawal or delay. So we still do not know exactly whether or not this final rule of the Trump administration that favors the higher salaries will or will not go into effect. But I'm expecting no. And that's for basically two reasons. One, even if it were to go into effect on March 9th, by then the lottery registration has started and millions of people will already have registered for the lottery under the old system. So it's really hard to believe that in the middle of the lottery registration process that United States Citizenship and Immigration Service will change it suddenly. Secondly, I do think that the Biden administration will put a halt to it, and if not them, then a court of law, because there will be many lawsuits filed to stop this legislation from taking place. So I am banking on the fact that I don't think we will have this final rule affect this year's lottery. Proposed legislation coming that's already been announced by the Biden administration. The big news is a path to citizenship for unauthorized immigrants inside the United States. Now, this has been talked about for years and years and years. They're always really close, never quite happens, and it's not going to be easy at all this year. Even though the Democrats control Congress and they control the White House, the Republicans could begin a filibuster to stop conversation on any one of the Biden proposals regarding immigration. And filibusters are tough to break. You need a vote of 60 to stop a filibuster. And the Democrats don't have 60 votes. So there'll be bits and pieces of the Biden plan that will get through, but I don't know about the overall path to legalization for 12 million undocumented people. I have great hopes, though, for those with DACA or temporary protected status. What are some of the other changes proposed by the Biden administration? They're going to be big on clearing up backlogs and reducing waiting times. They're talking about elimination of the per country limits for employment-based immigrants. This is huge for everybody because, as you may or may not know, under our current immigration system, no country can take up more than 7% of the green cards issued every year. And currently, India and China exceed the 7% every year. And that's why they have mammoth backlogs for Chinese and Indian citizens who are pursuing green card or permanent residency. If we get rid of the 7% cap, that means they are treated like everyone else. And here's the big issue. Thousands, tens of thousands of Indian and Chinese nationals are already in the queue. So this could be devastating for citizens of every other country in the world who are just starting the green card process and are not in the queue yet. So there's a lot to be sorted out to make sure this is fair for everybody. But interesting to note that the Biden administration is in favor of getting rid of the per country limits. The provision of employment authorization for dependents of H-1B, they are known as H-4 dependents. Some of them are allowed to get work authorization, but the Biden administration wants to make it easier for H-4 dependents to get work authorization. There'll also be significant improvements for STEM advanced degree holders from US universities, enabling them to stay in the United States. The Biden administration is in favor of giving a direct path to permanent residency for any foreign national who graduates a United States university with an advanced degree in a STEM field. Huge, huge change. We'll see if it gets through. I want to talk about the H-1B visa lottery. Quick background on H-1Bs. I think most of you on the call know about H-1Bs, but the H-1B is the most common way that foreign professional workers come to the United States to work. It requires a U.S. employer to offer a position that is a specialty occupation. That means that the job must require at least a bachelor's degree in a specialized field, and the foreign national must have that specialized degree. Because there's only 85,000 H-1Bs every year and the demand is in the hundreds of thousands, there's a lottery every year known as the H-1B lottery. U.S. employers can register for the H-1B lottery March 1st through 20th. It's very easy to register. It's just minimal information on one sheet of paper and a $10 registration fee. After the registration period ends on March 20th, the lottery will be conducted on March 21st or 22nd, and the 85,000 winners will be announced. Those 85,000 winners are then allowed to move ahead and file an H-1B petition. They must file the petition before June 30th, and only those who win the lottery can file for H-1B. Still then, USCIS must review and approve the petition, and once it's approved, the H-1B will be effective on October 1st, which is the first day of the government's fiscal calendar. I want to point out that while it is required that the foreign national have at least a bachelor's degree in a specialized occupation to file the H-1B petition, it's not required to enter the lottery. So those of you who are expecting to graduate this coming spring with a bachelor's degree, your employer could still enter the lottery March 1st through 20th, assuming you're going to have the degree before June 30th, which is the deadline to file the H-1B petition. I want to point out that there's a lot of confusion on whether startup companies can, and the founders of startup companies can self-sponsor themselves for H-1B. The answer is yes, but there are certain special requirements. All H-1B petitions require that there be a valid employer-employee relationship between the company and the employee. The issue is really about control. Does the company actually control the employee's employment? If you can prove that the company does control your employment, then even as a founder, the company can file an H-1B petition for you. How do you prove that? Well, basically, we work with your company's bylaws, and we massage the bylaws to make it very clear that you don't control your employment. Even if you own 100% of the company, the board of directors can still fire you, even if you own the company. And that's what makes it a valid employer-employee relationship. And that's how a founder can have his own company sponsor an H-1B. Next slide, thanks. What happens if you're not eligible for H-1B, or you don't win the lottery, or you're thinking about this after the lottery's already been conducted and you can't wait another year for the lottery? There's only a few solutions, and here are the highlights. You all should know about these possible alternatives to H-1B. L1 is for a multinational company, meaning there's a company outside the US and a company inside the US, and they are related to each other. If you have worked outside the US for at least 1 year of the past 3 years, you can be transferred to the US entity to work in the US as an executive, a manager, or a person who has some specialized knowledge about the company's technology, proprietary technology. That's what makes a valid L1. One of the great things about L1s is that they're not limited in number like the H-1B, always available. There's no salary requirement the way there is for H-1B. And maybe very importantly for some people, a spouse is permitted to always work if you're in L1. An O1 is for individuals of extraordinary ability who have received some measure of sustained national, international acclaim. USCIS has put out 8 criteria that they will consider when reviewing an O1 petition. And if you can prove you meet at least 3 of the 8 criteria, then you are extraordinary. So the 8 criteria are all over the internet. They're on my website. Essentially, have you published articles in scholarly journals? Has there been media coverage that's about you, awards and prizes, making a critical contribution to an organization of distinguished reputation? Any combination of 3 of these criteria will get you an O1. Again, the O1 is not limited in number, always available. E1 and E2, these are excellent work visa opportunities, but only if you are a citizen of a country with whom the United States has a treaty for either trade or investment. The E1 is for people who are citizens of countries with whom the US has a trade agreement. And if you can prove that there is some kind of substantial trade going back and forth between the United States and that country, you're eligible for an E1. E2 is for investment. You have to prove that the US entity has received a substantial investment and you are a citizen of a country with whom the US has a treaty for investment. Both of these visas require the US entity to be at least 50% owned by citizens of the treaty country. It's complex and confusing, but if you are a citizen of a company, of a country with a treaty with the US, absolutely need to investigate E1 or E2 work opportunities. J1s can offer a training visa to come to the US to work, but it's not really, it doesn't work for people who have just finished their F1 OPT. The US government is not going to give you yet another training opportunity in J1. TNs are for people from Canada or Mexico who are working in very certain specific professional occupations, and H-1B1 is reserved for citizens of Chile and Singapore who are offered professional jobs in the United States. So these are important opportunities for you to be familiar with. I want to take a special couple of minutes to talk about the cap-exempt H-1B because it offers some exciting opportunities, especially for people who think, I have no options. So remember cap-exempt H-1B. Here's how it works. Essentially, Congress has designated 4 different organizations who are exempt from the cap of 85,000 H-1Bs. These 4 organizations can always file an H-1B petition for a qualified foreign national any time of the year without winning the lottery. Universities, nonprofits who are affiliated with universities, nonprofit research organizations, and government research organizations. So, first takeaway, if you have nowhere to go, you didn't win the lottery, there is no lottery, there's no H-1B or L-1, you could be employed by one of those 4 organizations right away, and they can file a cap-exempt H-1B petition for you right away for you to work directly for them. Now, secret sauce. It turns out that private companies can also access an H-1B cap-exempt visa if they partner with one of those 4 kinds of organizations. I want to give you 2 examples. The first is a university. If you, the foreign national, if you have part-time work with a university and they have filed a cap-exempt H-1B for you, this opens up the door for any company to file its own cap-exempt H-1B for you so that you will concurrently work for the university and for the private company at the same time. This is true even if the company is not one of the 4 cap-exempt organizations. So getting cap-exempt H-1B status opens up the door for any company to also employ you concurrently in the cap-exempt H-1B status. Open Avenues. Open Avenues is located here in Massachusetts. It is a nonprofit organization that is affiliated with universities across the Commonwealth. And so Open Avenues Foundation is an example of an H-1B cap-exempt organization. They are running a global talent fellowship program where they will take talented foreign nationals in the United States who have no other options, but they do have an employer who's ready to hire them if only they could get one of the cap-exempt H-1B organizations to sponsor them for a cap-exempt H-1B petition. So Open Avenues Foundation would take a talented foreign national, make them one of their fellows, apply for a cap-exempt H-1B for 5 to 7 hours a week of work for that foreign national to use his or her professional talent and work for the nonprofit foundation for 5 to 7 hours a week, basically helping teach and mentor and train United States college students in the same field in which the foreign national has a degree. Once the Open Avenues Foundation cap-exempt H-1B is approved by USCIS, that opens the door for the private company, your company, the one you want to work for full-time, to immediately file its own cap-exempt H-1B petition. And you are now going to be able to work concurrently at the same time, 5 to 7 hours a week for Open Avenues Foundation and full-time for the very employer you've been wanting to work for. This is working out quite well. Just in 2020, Open Avenues Foundation had 9 cap-exempt H-1B petitions approved, and the last 8 in a row were approved without a request for evidence from USCIS. It's working well, and if you want information, we'll give you information how to reach out to Open Avenues Foundation at the end. Employment-based green cards. How do you get a green card in the United States, and what's the best time to start? Our employment-based green card system is broken down into different preferences. EB1 is the first preference. These are the foreign nationals the United States wants the most. These are foreign nationals with extraordinary ability, or they are outstanding researchers or professors, or they are multinational executives and managers. EB2, these are jobs, these are positions that require an advanced degree. There's only 2 ways to qualify for an EB2. One is to have a US employer sponsor you for a perm labor certification application. This is the somewhat complex process where a US employer proves to the US Department of Labor that it tried to recruit and find US workers to fill a particular job, but were unable to do so. The other way to get an EB2 green card is through the national interest waiver. Foreign nationals are allowed to sponsor themselves for a national interest waiver. They do not need an employer, and they do not need to prove that there's no US worker out there. They simply need to prove that the work they are involved with has substantial intrinsic value to the United States, that they are well situated to continue to bring that improvement to that benefit to the people of the United States, and that it is more beneficial to the people of the United States to have this particular foreign national do this job in the United States rather than to see if there is a US worker with the bare minimal qualifications to do that job. So immigration lawyers across the country are filing tremendous numbers of national interest waivers. They're being approved, and if you qualify, it's an excellent way to get a green card. I will say, I want everyone to remember, this is an EB2 classification, not an EB1. So if you are from India or China, there is a backlog, a much longer backlog than the EB1 category for an EB2 national interest waiver. EB3 are for all other jobs that don't require an advanced degree. Sometimes it's a job that requires a bachelor's degree. Sometimes it's a job that doesn't require any degree at all. Those fall into EB3. All of them need the employer to file a perm labor certification application and prove there's no US worker out there who can do the job. EB5 is known as the $1 million investment visa, although it's now more than $1 million. EB5 is for people who can invest $1.8 million into the US economy and create 10 jobs. The investment amount is reduced to $900,000 if the 10 jobs are created either in a rural area or in an area of significant high unemployment. I'll leave it at that, but certainly if anyone thinks they're qualified for EB-5, you can reach out to me or any other qualified immigration lawyer. Next slide. Okay, waiting for the next slide.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
I am going to hop on. We have a few extra minutes before our next speaker comes on, so I want to just continue. We actually had quite a few questions on Open Avenues, so I'm going to introduce myself and just talk about the program a bit. My name is Danielle. I am co-founder and executive director of Open Avenues Foundation. We are really excited about the program that Jeff described earlier. I'm going to try to go back to that slide. This year, as Jeff said, we had 10 Global Talent Fellows in our program. We are planning on expanding that number this year. It's been, with those 10 employees that we brought on part-time, we've actually been able to work with more than 100 students at local community colleges in workforce development. So when Tom talks about creating a more diverse STEM workforce, it's a huge focus of our efforts at Open Avenues Foundation is to bring this cohort of foreign talent and build this future diverse STEM workforce driven by the foreign nationals who are coming to the United States and are continuing to innovate and fill these talent gaps within our STEM ecosystem. So the questions I'm seeing are about how does the process actually work and how selective is it? So we are looking first when you apply on our website for our fellowship that you have a company that is willing to sponsor you for the CAP exempt H-1B. We're looking to make sure that you have a solid H-1B petition. So when Jeff went through what a specialty occupation is, the same requirements are true for a CAP exempt H-1B. So you have to have a specialty occupation. You have to have an employer that's willing to sponsor you. And we're really focused on STEM fields. Our university partnerships are within STEM boot camps and STEM departments at our university partners. So we are looking to fill fellowship positions in 2021 within those STEM fields. I can say we have data scientists, we have software developers, we have chemists, we have mechanical engineers. We do have some financial analysts and in the business realm, but we we have more opportunity in traditional STEM fields. So, that's really how the process works. For those 5 hours per week, we are pairing individuals with universities, and we are very conscious that our fellows have full-time jobs, which they're also able to work in CAP exempt H-1B status through our model. So during those 5 hours per week, really 1 hour is student facing, 2 to 3 hours is more about the time spent with like offering students the opportunity to connect, to build out LinkedIn profiles, to figure out how to develop careers. And 1 hour is spent on administrative time with the organization. So we make this manageable as a fellowship. And for any HR professionals on the line right now or company representatives, we partner directly with companies to support employees who are interested in this fellowship. So that's how this works. We're happy to speak to any HR professionals about this option. We're happy to speak to foreign nationals who are interested in this option. And our contact information is at the end of this presentation, but you can reach out at info@openavenusfoundation.org or Danielle@openavenusfoundation.org, and you can reach me directly.
Danielle, does the foreign national and company need to be in Massachusetts, or are you able to work with companies and foreign nationals outside?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are working with foreign nationals and companies that are across the United States. We're in Texas, California, and Atlanta and New York right now. So because everything is done on Zoom, our fellows are able to be in their home states and be on Zoom working with our partner universities in Massachusetts. In 2021, we are building out partnerships in additional states so that there can be local community colleges that are benefiting from the talent within their area, the foreign talent within their area in the US. So that's all in progress. We're building, we're growing, and we are excited about welcoming new fellows in 2021. So if the visa lottery does not work out for you, you do not qualify for some of the other work visas that Jeff mentioned prior, we are really excited to speak with you about this opportunity, and hopefully you will reach out. I am going to have Yvonne hop on, and hopefully she will be able to introduce Mariano if he's on as well.
I want to jump in with one quick thing. Many questions are coming in, and I want to remind everyone that all of the questions will be answered. We're answering them both on the chat line as they come in, but also at the end of the presentation, everyone will receive a copy of the slide deck and all of the questions and all of the answers. So be prepared to receive that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Danielle. My name is Yvonne McCaig. I'm a managing director with Silicon Valley Bank here in Boston. And I run a few of our regional practices, being fintech, hardware, consumer, and marktech. And I essentially spend my time in market with CEOs and founders like Mariano, who I'll introduce shortly, with the ultimate mission of doing everything that we can to increase our clients' probability of success. And we do that at SVB through essentially leaning into relationships as early as possible and opening up our doors and our network. And that's how I came to know Mariano, the CEO and founder of Onapsis. Mariano, I just want to check if you're on the line. I think we'll give him a minute. I think we're running a little bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I actually think that he might need another minute.
Yvonne, while we're waiting, maybe you could tell us about the different companies that Silicon Valley Bank works with in relation to their size, their depth, and their fields of technology.
Yeah, I would love to. You know, technology and life science is at the heart and soul of SVB, and rather be a large bank that tries to be everything to every type of person and every type of organization. We solely focus on the innovation economy. So everything is either tech or life science. We also bank the partners that fund that ecosystem as well on the VC side of the house. And interestingly, we have a wine division as well. And for us, our model is really to start working with clients as early as we possibly can. And that's when we start to add value, even from those really early days, be it connecting like-minded CEOs and founders to their peers in market, or opening up our doors and our network to VCs who perhaps may lead their next round. So they're the types of areas where I feel we add our largest part of value far and beyond the banking. We can do any parts of banking that anyone else possibly needs, but it's really these doors and connections that differentiate us from our peers. And as I said, it's those companies from, you know, those initial inception where they're, you know, just thinking of hiring their first employees, right beyond SPAC and IPO timeframe. We have practices here in Boston, the West Coast. We have offices globally as well, the UK, Israel, China, Germany, some of the Nordics, Canada. So the list is boundless and we're growing exponentially. We just released our year-end results last week, and our mission and our value is really simple. It's just to do the right thing for people. And it's a really good story of how when people come together with really good values and simply do the right thing, ultimately good things happen. The bank is thriving, and more importantly, the innovation ecosystem is continuing to thrive. And this year in particular has been exceptionally strong.
Thanks, Yvonne. And I know Mariano is on the line now, so if you want to introduce him, we can.
Great to see you, Mariano. You know, I'd like to just introduce Mariano to the broader group. He is the CEO and co-founder of Onapsis, which is a Boston-based cybersecurity company that protects the mission-critical systems of the world's largest organizations. And Onapsis created actually a new category in its industry, and by right recognized as one of the fastest growing technology companies in America by the Deloitte Technology Fast 500. And Mariano actually began his career as a professional hacker at the age of 18. And his investigations resulted in hundreds of new vulnerabilities and critical notifications from the US Department of Homeland Security. And he has actually been selected as Endeavor Entrepreneur, 2012 Entrepreneur of the Year by MIT Technology Review, 2018 Entrepreneur of the Year, and 40 Under 40 by Boston Business Journal. And my favorite part about Mariano is that he's just an all-around great human being. So thank you so much, Mariano, for taking the time to be here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne, for having me. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. It's a little bit faint.
Let me see if we get a bit closer. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's getting a little bit stronger.
Okay. Yeah, I can yell a bit more.
Okay, that's a good idea. You know, you've achieved what so many immigrants, Mariano, only dream of achieving. And you've co-founded this company. You moved to the US. You've grown and scaled it with exceptional success. You most recently closed your $55 million Series D in October. And you're from one immigrant to another. There's really nobody I would rather partner with on this panel. So thank you again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, always happy to help with anything I can. I know it's a very unique journey in terms of like a challenging journey in terms of moving to a different country and setting up in as you very well know, Yvonne. So yeah, happy to help with anything I can and bring my perspective.
Thank you. And you're sponsoring a foreign national candidate. It's a very expensive and often complex and time-consuming process. You know, as you think about a foreign national applying for roles in your company, what is it that makes it worth the investment, and what factors do you really consider when you're evaluating a foreign national candidate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, I think for us, it's really a matter of skill set and what we're looking for. I think we don't have a specific bias or inclination to hire from a specific, let's say, foreign national in this case. But we're looking for a very specific set, as you said in the introduction. We're solving a very specific problem in the cybersecurity industry. So we need a specific set of skill sets that may not be that easy to find. And maybe they're not easy to find in the US, maybe they're not easy to find where I'm coming from Argentina. So we really have to expand our purview, you know, how we think about kind of really getting the best people in the planet to work with us to solve this problem. So I think for us is that skill set, that experience that we're looking for that drives then the potential expansion to include maybe other people in this process. Overall, like the companies, just to give you an overview, like we're about 400 employees now, and we're kind of very distributed for our scale. So we have about a half of the company is in Argentina. That's where we have most of our research and development teams, and really the US, and the other two halves are US and Europe. So we already have a very, let's say, international team, multicultural team for our scale. And the US, we actually have been able to hire foreign nationals to really support, especially our product management and pre-sales engineering functions in the US. That's where we have in the core of the foreign nationals. And we recently, actually this week, just expanded our executive team with a foreign national from the UK. So we're really kind of, again, looking for the best people, and regardless of where they're coming from, if we don't find the talent here in Boston, we definitely expand that to wherever we can find the talent we're looking for.
That's great. When we dove into the Mass TLC report on the economic impact of immigrants in the US, it noted that in Massachusetts, there's only one graduate with a computer science or IT degree for every 17 tech jobs available. Has this talent gap driven your company to hire more foreign talent? Are there other factors that make foreign national candidates more valuable to Anapsys?
Yeah, I would touch maybe on the second piece first. Again, we're heavily biased towards kind of a multicultural mindset, right? So of course, the immediate benefit you get with someone that's an immigrant or have a different perspective is that kind of multicultural mindset and kind of growth mindset from that perspective. Most of our customers are either in North America or in Europe. So having someone that can really understand that things in Europe and even in specific countries in Europe are done a different way than in America, that of course brings a lot of value to us. So that perspective, I think that's an immediate benefit you get with someone that has lived through this. For us, definitely the talent gap has accelerated maybe some of these initiatives. For us, especially, it's been around the innovation team that we have. We have a team as part of our research labs that is focused on innovation. And that's where we need this very unique combination of cybersecurity with ERP or mission critical application knowledge that is very hard to find. So in that case, we've been able to relocate 2 members of the team from Argentina to the US here to Boston to really support that motion, because we couldn't really find that talent here in the US.
Makes sense. And any advice that you would like to share with foreign national candidates that are applying for a job and they're seeking sponsorship? What's the best way to approach this topic in an interview as well? I think that would be helpful to share with the audience.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think you have to find the right balance there. I think what I'm thinking is, like, I think about when I've been interviewing, kind of in the interviewer side. I think it's, of course, you're first looking for match with the opportunity and the company, right? So I think you really need to understand, like, as you would do for any typical interview, maybe in your home country, like what do you really want to work here? Do you really want to see yourself as a good match for the role? And really, I think it's mostly understanding that and just like going through that on the first interview, getting to know your kind of future job. But I think you have to also make sure you bring this and be upfront about if you have any specific visa requirements or residence requirements. I think it's important you bring this, maybe not in the first interview, but I wouldn't let it go past the second round or maybe the third at most. If you see things really tracking well, I think you definitely want to be upfront about it. Not to surprise your potential employer. Maybe for whatever reason they're not able to do this just mechanically. But also for you, like if that eventually you don't want to spend like 2 months on an interview process and then realize that in the last week that this is a surprise and they won't be able to do it. So I think it's important to bring it up. I know there may some people may be a bit hesitant to do that and when to do that. I think if I in my seat, I would look at kind of this happening probably in the second or third round at most. So it's a good use of everyone's time if for any reason this is not possible, right? So I think, yeah, that's probably how I would approach it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's something that's front of mind for a lot of people on the phone is really how to navigate that conversation. When do you bring it up and what's the right time frame? So coming at it from the hiring perspective is certainly helpful for everyone. And from your experience, right, looking at this, as an immigrant entrepreneur, what's your advice to foreign talent as they navigate the U.S. business environment and launch their careers here?
Yeah, don't do a lot of the mistakes I've done. So I'll try to share some of those, so maybe at least it helps. I think a couple of things. If you're coming in to start a business or you're like kind of starting something new from scratch, I would say if you don't have a network of people here, which was my case. I came from Argentina to Boston in 2013, and we really didn't have any friends or people that we knew here in Boston. So I think the first tactical thing I would say, like, try to work in a place where you can actually see other people. I work at a kind of co-working place that was not the cool type of environments that you see now, kind of with some of the modern ways. It was more like just me in a small office by myself, like 14 hours a day. So that wasn't very healthy, I think, for your mental health. The other thing that I maybe related with that, but I didn't do as much as I now realize I should have, is just get inserted in some of the networks that are already here, especially for expats or people that may be going through the same thing you're going through, because that helps you accelerate a lot. Just have that network support people that have lived through this and can really point you in the right direction. You're just going to save an incredible amount of time instead of doing all the research in Google and like all the steps. It's a very complex process. So the more you can accelerate that, you're going to save a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of stress just do the research on the networks. Go to those networks and see what comes out of it before spending a ton of time just doing the research yourself. There's a lot of smart people that have figured this out before, so you definitely want to tap into that. But again, it's something I didn't do and definitely made the process way more painful than it could have been.
I have to echo that sentiment as well. And it was something that I didn't do and should have done a much better job of when I came here. It makes your life infinitely easier when you can surround yourself by a network of people that want to help. And when you're able to connect with people who have been through a similar process, we all have enormous amounts of empathy and everybody just wants to help. So It helps you accelerate that path a lot faster, as you said. And also, again, just helps with that mental health aspect. Like you, Mariano, I moved here, I knew nobody. I assumed being Irish that I would have a ton of connections or people who knew somebody. I didn't know a single person here. So it is challenging, but the easy way to do it from both the visa perspective, the network, the mental health, the friendship perspective is just to get out there and spend some time with people.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that helps. And again, you don't know what comes out of that. I think it helps you with your specific goals of like trying to achieve that, and there's kind of serendipity, and you can really get to know a lot of people like that could end up being good friends, or just also help you with other things you're trying to accomplish professionally. So I think it's a great thing. Again, and there are now more and more, I think, in my case, would be like a Hispanic network, right, of people that are coming from Latin America. I know there are like kind of hubs like those for different backgrounds. So yeah, I would research on those and try to tap into those as much as possible. There are some now good co-working spaces that have this type of programs already kind of baked into the same kind of experience. So you have also that opportunity to leverage those if you choose the right place there. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big, I think looking back, same as you, Yvonne, that would have made things way easier for sure. And fun, like more fun.
yeah, just more fun. It's just find the easy path in life when it does exist.
Right,
and I think nobody particularly looks forward to going to a lot of networking events, but only good things come out of it. And if you go and you don't enjoy it, what's the worst that can happen? You give up an hour or half an hour of your evening.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, that's exactly why I didn't. Like, I'm not a big networking fan, and I didn't join because of that. And again, now I see that probably adapting to that and putting myself out there a bit more would have helped accelerate some things. So 100%. Yeah.
I wish we had met in our earlier days.
All right.
I know we're a little bit close on time. Anything else that you wanted to share with us before we wrap up, or is that just about it?
No, happy to help. Again, if anyone has a specific question, you can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy at least to give you my perspective, or try to point anyone on the right path as I see it. Yeah, look, it's a great. I think it's a great time to be exploring this type of topics. I think again, like tech companies, if you're thinking about doing this for a tech company as a potential someone who wants to get a job, there is a real thirst for really. Not only talking about experience, about people that are really, you can tell that they want to really grow, even if they don't have experience. They have the right attitude and can really help companies. So I think it's a great time in that regard, and I encourage everyone to go through it. Again, just at least my perspective, just be upfront about it in the interview process. Work with your person. I think if there is a good fit and there is no really external blocker for it, I see many of my fellow CEOs are already hiring the best people from anywhere and are supporting foreign nationals to go through the process if they're the right fit for the company. So I think in that perspective, it's a good time.
Well, thank you, Mariano. I said you've been a true inspiration to the audience here today, and I know your insights have been immensely helpful. And thank you again for taking the time out to join us.
Yeah, of course, Yvonne. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Likewise.
And I'd love to introduce everyone next to Paris Chandler, who is the creator of the hashtag community and movement Black Tech Twitter, and the founder of Black Tech Pipeline, which connects employers to Black technologists and helps those employers retain them through their accountability model. They also offer a job board to candidates who are looking for the next opportunity at companies who are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Paris, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and I'll hand the reins over to you.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, you know how remote learning goes with children, so I'm just telling my son to be quiet. So yes, hi, my name is Paris Chandler. I am founder of Black Tech Pipeline. Black Tech Pipeline came into existence from bringing exposure to the Black community in the tech industry. I used to be a software engineer, and I never got to work with anyone who looked like me. And so when I got onto Twitter, believe it or not, I put out a tweet asking, what does Black Twitter in tech look like? And that tweet happened to go viral, and it connected thousands of Black technologists and supporters together, and it formed this new community called Black Tech Twitter. And from there, I began recruiting candidates from this new Black Tech Twitter community into different companies. Reason being, a lot of employers saw the tweet and asked me if I would recruit candidates for them. And I did that for a long time for free. I would allow, I would recruit candidates from our community, from our Slack community and Discord community into these companies because I wanted more representation. I wanted to see more people who look like me in the industry. I felt that it's super important because, you know, I don't want our community to be left behind. We live in a digitally driven era, and it is very true when they say, you know, you can be replaced by a machine. That is very true. Before I got into tech, I was a wax specialist, waxing body hair full time. And I was being replaced by laser hair removal, which completely removes hair permanently, which could have affected my job, which then affects my income and my well-being. So I decided to get into tech, and I know that I am not the only one, and obviously in our community, who could be affected or impacted in that way. And that is why I decided, yes, like I definitely want to recruit. I want to get more people into this industry. So that's what I did. I was recruiting people into companies, and that was working out really well because people were getting jobs. However, they actually weren't staying at those jobs. Those companies weren't able to retain the talent that I was recruiting. And this is where diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important. A lot of companies focus on diversifying the industry, but if you aren't inclusive and you aren't equitable, you're not going to retain the recruits that you get. Therefore, we're still in this dilemma of being left behind because we're not staying in an industry that isn't caring for us. And so what Black Tech Pipeline is, aside from being a recruiter, I hold employers accountable and also make sure that every hire is getting exactly what they need to be set up for success. So anyone who's hired out of Black Tech Pipeline, I virtually stay on the job with them for their first 90 days. So what that looks like is I do biweekly check-ins with every hire to see, you know, how it's going, what's their experience been like, do you have the tools and resources that you need? They give me very transparent feedback on what's going on at that company, how they're feeling. And I take that feedback and I relay it to their manager or a DEI officer, a people ops person. And we go ahead and talk about how we're going to set that hire up for success based on their goals and their needs. We talk about the feedback that they gave us, whether it was positive or negative. If it was negative, what are we going to do to solve this issue? We want to be actionable and not performative. And then we do talk about every company's diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, policies, and initiatives. We want to make sure that, you know, DE&I is something that they're building into the foundation of their company and they're growing with it. You know, it's not something that you talk about or practice once and that's it. It's like a forever practice for as long as the company exists. And so that is the important work of Black Tech Pipeline. I hope that more recruiting agencies pick up this model because it does help with retention and it, you know, it creates a community. It builds a better culture. It makes everyone feel like they're part of something instead of, you know, coming into a company as, you know, that solo minority and feeling as though you have to assimilate to a culture that was built without you, that doesn't have any sort of representation of you. And so that's the work that I do full time. And yeah. Should I take any questions at all?
Danielle, sorry, did you want to man the chat and chime in with any questions that we may have there? Thanks for sharing, Paris. That's really helpful.
Sure.
Paris, I thank you so much. And we have a few more minutes and I think it'd be awesome. You know, we have a lot of human resource officers who are joining this call or will be viewing it later. Any advice that you can give to those groups on when developing DE&I strategies and when thinking about, you know, Black employees and also foreign national employees? You know, there's so much that goes into diversity
Right.
when we think about that. And what are some strategies when thinking about how to ensure that those individuals feel integrated into the company?
Yeah, so for me, I like to keep things really simple. I don't think that it has to be complicated. Just ask. So first of all, you know, you don't want to think or speak for an entire community. You want to ask each individual because every human is different. You know, so how do you learn best? What are your goals? What are your intentions? You know, you want to be able to give each individual what they need to be set up for success, and then ask them for feedback. You know, how can I be of better help? What could we be doing better? Take that feedback and don't get offended by it if it's negative. It's something that's going to help you create change in a positive way. I think doing, you know, anonymous surveys for your employees when it comes to DE&I, asking them what could be done better. You know, maybe they've seen some successful methods at different companies or at school or wherever that can help you out as an organization. But yeah, I feel like just being transparent, you know, asking questions, asking for feedback. I think that's the best way to go about it. Cater to each individual. And of course, you know, if you don't know where to start, there are consultants out there who are experts in this work. Hire them. They'd be able to help you as well.
Paris, I want to just flip that question now because we have a lot of foreign nationals on this call and who will be viewing this later. When someone doesn't feel like their company or their potential employer is inclusive and they feel that they're being ostracized in some way, what are ways that you think employees should advocate for themselves? How do you bring up that you feel that the workplace is not as inclusive as it could be?
So this is where I feel like building a really good relationship with your direct manager comes in. I don't always say, you know, to run straight to HR. I think to your manager is best first. Let them know, you know, what's going on, why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You know, have they dealt with these sort of issues before? How have they handled them? Let them know how you want it to be handled. What would make you feel better? And it's your manager's responsibility to then take that feedback and relay it to the appropriate person who can make those changes. And sometimes this does consist of talking to multiple people. Sometimes going into companies means that, you know, you'll have to find allies who will also advocate for you. And like talking is always easy. Actually doing it can be difficult. It can take time. And I just like to be honest. But I think, you know, finding your allies, and I really do think allies should be the ones to be vocal, those who do have your back and they want to speak up for you as well and understand how you're feeling and how they can also do better. You know, I think allies should be the ones to let you know that they're allies, so that you know who to go to for help. But if that's not happening, again, finding your allies, speaking to your manager. There might be a direct contact that you should speak to. Sometimes it is like, there is a DEI officer that you can speak to. It could be the people ops person. It could be the head recruiter. It really depends. These are things that you want to find out. You can find out in an interview before you even accept an offer from a company. You can find out when an offer is given. You know, before I accept this, you know, I'd love to know X, Y, and Z. Just remember, like, your health and happiness come first, and you're allowed to find out this sort of information before you know, accepting anything.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful for folks on this call, and it's really important when we're thinking about how increasingly the STEM workforce is diverse and there's demand for that talent, and companies are going to have to adjust their strategies moving forward. So it's really an awesome perspective, and we thank you so much for joining us today. And Jeff, if you want to take it over from here and just close out the session, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Well, thanks to all for joining us today. I really hope it was as informative as you were looking for, and that you have some strong takeaway points. I want to thank our co-sponsors, Silicon Valley Bank, Massachusetts Technology Leadership Council, Open Avenues Foundation, and Goldman & Partners Immigration Law, and our special guests, Mariano Nunez and Paris Chandler. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Keep sending in any more questions, and we will be sending you all a copy of the slide deck and a full copy of all the questions and answers. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.